I don't think he made a mistake this week. He's been put in this impossible position. You've got a labor market which is clearly in freeze mode. And so my interpretation of today's report is I don't remember a jobs report that provided so much clarity, because it's not just about the past month, it's about the past 3 months, right? So with the revisions, we are clearly in a situation where employers are freezing hiring, they're taking care of the workers they have, but we're only adding 35,000 jobs or so a month, and most of that is the healthcare sector. So you've got a labor market which is frozen, but on the prices side, it's very clear that we're in the middle of an inflationary episode because of tariffs, right? And so you would expect the normal lag to be 3 to 5 months after tariffs are implemented. The Fed is in an impossible position. Prices are rising. The labor market is stagnant. So I don't think that Powell made a mistake. But he's been put in this position, a position he did not ask for.
How's it going to feel in September if this kind of deterioration continues?
So if the labor market stays the same and we see the hikes that we're expecting in prices,
further.
Yeah, it's sort of like, what is the worst case? What's the worst shock? So are we seeing prices rise more than we thought? Are we going to see core PCE go above 3%? I mean, if core PCE is above 3%, how can the Fed possibly start cutting? It can't, even if the U3 is at 4.3, 4.4, 4.5.
Yes, okay.
And so if prices continue to rise the way we expect them to, I don't think the Fed can cut, and markets disagree right now. So you see this big one-day change between yesterday and today. Yesterday, markets thought the Fed will cut between 1 and 2 times between the end of the year, between 25 and 50 bips. Now markets are certain the Fed will cut by at least 50 bips, maybe 75. But I think that maybe they're misinterpreting the impact of these higher prices owing to tariffs.
Well, so let's talk about those tariffs. Obviously, it's August 1st.
Yeah.
While the levies aren't actually going to be collected until August 7th, so there's still a bit of wiggle room here. We're looking, according to Bloomberg Economics, at an aggregate tariff rate on average that's going to move up to 15.2%. What difference will that ultimately make in the prices people see at the store and how it actually tracks into inflation gauges?
So the rule of thumb is that for every percentage point increase in the average tariff rate, you see a 0.10 increase in the inflation rate. So if you're going from around a rate of around 3%, like we saw at the beginning of the Trump administration, up to 15, we're talking about 1.2 percentage points increase in inflation, which is a lot in a short period of time. And you're starting to see prices get passed through in exactly the way we would have predicted. So you can look at things like recreational goods. You can look at things like home furnishings. These are things we import from China, and those prices are rising. And so it's very clear that the tariffs are having an inflationary impact.
We're going to talk with Peter Navarro on the late edition of Balance of Power. He has sat in that chair and argued, and he would fight with you right now on the idea that tariffs are inflationary. And you've heard this line from the White House, that when you have a one-time change in prices, that it's a different phenomenon. You're seeing a trend, though, that will continue.
So I don't agree with Peter Navarro on almost anything.
I understand.
But I do agree that it is a one-time shock.
Okay.
And so when I look at tariffs, I think that the real concern with them is not the inflationary impact, for the reasons that Navarro says. It's a one-time shock. That's bad news. It's terrible timing. It's a time when you'd like to see the Fed be able to cut and it can't. Okay. The real problem with tariffs are that it has eroded the United States' credibility as a trading partner. And you're seeing that in terms of not just trading, but also investment. Investment has been stagnant despite this $4 trillion bill. And so if you look at sort of the average tariff rate on China, they're all over the place. Tariffs started off at 10%. They went to 20%. Yeah. They're at 104% for a while, 145. Now they're down to 30. I don't know what they're going to be in 3 months. Neither does Peter Navarro. Neither does President Trump. Who would want to trade with someone who's rapidly switching prices like that so frequently? So it's not this one-time price shock from tariffs that really concern me. It's the erosion of our credibility as a trading partner.
Well, when we consider the investment question which you raised, the White House would contend they've had trillions of dollars in investment pledges coming in from various governments or companies announcing they're going to be building more manufacturing capacity in the U.S., even if some of that money had already been previously announced as well. Even if it does materialize, how long does it actually take to translate into more demand for labor, more American jobs, if it were to work as they say it's designed?
So the White House has no credibility on this point. The White House has no credibility on this point because we have an example in the first Trump administration. We had that phase 1 deal with China. Sure. We had hundreds of billions of dollars of commitments that China had no intention of fulfilling, and that the administration did nothing to ensure that it was fulfilled. There's outstanding confusion around these trade deals. Let's just be clear about what these trade deals are. They're frameworks. So the USMCA bill that was signed in the first Trump administration was 1,800 pages. The trade framework with the UK, which was the most comprehensive so far, was 5. These are not trade deals. There's massive confusion. You can look at the Japanese trade deal, $550 billion of investment pledges. Japan said, you know, these aren't really investment pledges. These are loans at market rates.
The White House called it a blank check.
Yeah. And
So what happens 6 months to a year from now when they're trying to draw down this cash?
No one knows. No one knows. And so if I was going to characterize the U.S. economy right now, it would be chaos and confusion. And you're seeing that in businesses. You're seeing it from business leaders. They're saying, I don't know what's going to happen with trade. I don't know what's going to happen with the regulation. So what I'm doing is I'm standing pat until there's some clarity. This is really bad for American business.
Well, so should it be bad for American markets or U.S. equity markets? Because until today, where, yes, you are seeing some significant downward pressure, we were hovering around record highs. It seemed like everybody was in a pretty good mood, or at the very least willing to look through the president's latest tariffs.
Yeah, I think the reason for that is during the transition between administrations, the way that economists and the way that financial markets were looking at the Trump administration was this kind of fight between, on the good side, you have this massive tax cut coming, and you've got widespread deregulation. And a lot of executives are really excited about that. And then on the other side, you have pretty stark tariffs and a really aggressive anti-immigration platform. And so you have this fight between these two different factors. It's clear that the negative impacts of tariffs and going to zero immigration, which we haven't talked about yet, but I think is a real factor, is beating the positive impacts of this really expensive tax package and deregulation. So I think that's what you're seeing in equity markets today.
Participation in the jobs report today fell to the lowest level in months. Does that suggest full employment? People are sitting on their hands waiting for something. You add a number of mass deportations. What's that number going to look like, say, the end of this year?
So in terms of participation, when I'm looking at some of the alternative labor market metrics, you're seeing there are a lot of people who want to work who aren't. And after you spend enough time looking for a job, you're eventually going to start dropping out. And so you can expect that to happen. That's what happens, as you guys know, when economies weaken. In terms of immigration, I mean, the answer has to be, I don't know. So going back to 1990, outside of COVID, we have added in net migration in the United States between 1 million and 1.8 million people every single year. This happened during the first Trump administration. It happened during Clinton. We're about to go close to zero. So you look at estimates coming out of my colleagues at Brookings, we think we're going to be anywhere between minus 500,000 and plus about 150. We have never seen anything like that. And I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means for housing markets. It's probably bad for certain industries like agriculture, fishing, some manufacturing. But this is an unprecedented experiment, and we're all going to go on a bit of a ride here.